And good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson. How are you?
And we are live. We're the Scanner Guys this evening. Hopefully, everybody's having a great week. We are on a holiday today. Scanner Master was closed, but we are live this evening on this Veterans Day.
Yep. Happy Veterans Day. Hope everybody's got their flags out.
Yeah, that's for sure. So we've got a good show for you tonight. We're going to cover military air, or military aircraft. Is going to be the show topic of tonight. So this is one of many shows that we're going to be running throughout the rest of the year. We actually have almost the whole entire year planned out for shows. So we've got some really good shows coming up this fall into winter. So let's take a look at our topic slide right here. So as always, the Scanner Guys are brought to you by Scanner Master. And let's continue on here.
Yeah.
And look at here. We are sending emails throughout the...
Looks like YouTube is having some connectivity issues. So you want to try rebooting it?
It's going to change the link, though.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it seems to be working on our end, guys. We got a bunch of people reporting error messages, so I'm not sure what's going on. Must be something weird with YouTube this week. It's the first time we've had that happen.
Do you have it on your local feed, or do you have that off?
Actually, it doesn't show up. An error's occurred. Let me try refreshing the screen here.
All right.
No, not looking good tonight here.
Okay, let's see here. So what we're going to do is I think we're going to switch over to Facebook.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think we'll have to. Yeah, why don't we, hold on one second. I would have to dump out of this and then go, YouTube is down in Michigan. Can they see our comments?
Yeah, the comments seem to be going through.
All right, so let's see here. We'll, all right, hold on one second. So what I'm going to do, just came back online here. All right, so what we're going to do is,
oh, now they're saying they can see us. So
okay. So what we'll do is let's just go back to the two screen here, and we'll kill some time. Yeah. So what'd you have for dinner tonight, Rich?
Beer can chicken.
Ooh, how is that made?
Oh, you take you cut a top off of a beer can and put the chicken on it and cook it in there, and all the beer just kind of absorbs into the chicken, makes it nice and so they can see. Yeah, Dave says he can see us, but I'm still not seeing anything here.
Okay. All right. So what we can do is.
And it says we've been streaming for 4 minutes, so
yeah,
it's something with YouTube.
Yeah, so let me. Yeah, we are live right now. We're having some technical difficulties with.
So
with
some
YouTube.
people are saying we're good, and some people are saying they're still getting errors.
Yeah, so got you know when in Massachusetts.
Got you now in Massachusetts.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I can't. Let me just see.
Oh, it looks like Google's having some problems because even Gmail is having issues. So
hold on one second. All right, guys. We are going to be simulcasting as of right now. We're simulcasting on the Scanner Guys Facebook page right now, so we should be simulcasting on there right now. The awesomeness of technology. We are simulcasting now on the Scanner Guys Facebook page. Let me just load it up.
Yeah, you got the link for that, and we'll put that on the chat.
Yeah, we'll put that up. Let's see, hold on one second. Waiting for it to. Wow, that is cool. We're live right there. So, I'm just trying.
Okay, I got the link. So.
Yeah, you got the link. Just post it.
Yeah, it looks like YouTube and Gmail and Google is Google is having problems. So,
all right, let me just go to. I didn't see your.
We're trying to get it fixed, guys.
Let's see here.
All right, so apparently they've got us on Facebook. So, so I guess we're going to be on Facebook tonight, boys and girls.
And somewhat simulcasting on YouTube tonight. So go figure.
Yeah, usually it's Facebook that has the problems and not YouTube. Oh, it says, yeah, YouTube is down worldwide. So obviously they're having issues. So.
Oops, what did that do? All right, so what we'll do is, what time is it now? We're gonna give you guys a few minutes to go over to YouTube, not YouTube, to Facebook. Right. Let's see here. So we'll give them a couple more minutes, Rich, before we start the broadcast. Let everybody transition over to Facebook. Make sure you like the Scanner Guys Facebook page, because this is going to be handy in case we ever have another issue with YouTube. You guys can hop over to our Facebook page. So we're going to let everybody shuffle in. Everybody's going to shuffle in and join us on the YouTube page. I'm sorry to the guys that typically see us on YouTube and are not fans of Facebook, but this is the backup, to allow us to be able to do this.
Yeah, it appears that YouTube is just kind of got scattered up. It's up in scattered locations, but most locations it's down. So there are a few people that are actually able to see us on YouTube. We will monitor the chat on both YouTube and Facebook. So.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure if there'll be any latency or any issues with us receiving some of the messages from YouTube. If we don't see it, we apologize for that. As you know, it's going to be subject to the beast tonight.
Yeah, well, like I say, I am seeing the chat messages from both Facebook and YouTube here. So, and it appears that, like I say, we're getting the chat messages. We're just not getting any video. So,
all right.
So I guess it's going to be a Facebook night tonight, guys and girls.
Yes. So we're going to start about 10 minutes after the hour. We'll give another minute just so everybody can file in on YouTube. And then once everybody's filed in on there, then what we'll do is we'll kick off the show again, just, so everybody can actually see and hear us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's not us this time. Usually it's us having techie issues, but it's them.
All right, while we're waiting, Rich, so the beer can chicken.
Okay.
Did you have any?
So, you just take a whole chicken, basically, and, gutted, of course. You buy the frozen ones and about the size of a football. and you just cut the top off a beer can. Actually, my wife's got a rack made for that, but you can just just cut the top off a beer can and about half full with beer, stick it up there and cook it like that. And the chicken is standing in the oven like this. Cook it for about an hour and a half, and it is awesome, nice and juicy, and just awesome.
Sounds good. And you do that right in the oven, right?
Yeah, just open the oven. Yeah, just put it on the bottom rack. You got to take the top 2 racks out because it's tall, So, and for those asking, we will keep the Facebook, the video. We will post the video to the YouTube page once YouTube is going. And we're going to restart from the start, so we'll be able to do the introductions again. Yeah, we're on the backup transmitter.
Yeah, we're on the backup tonight. So what we're going to do is also this archives, the video archives on here, so I may have to edit this portion out of it. What kind of beer are you at? Evan asked.
Oh, I'm a Coors Light guy, basically flavored water.
All right. So what we're going to do, everybody, that we're going to reset, and then we're going to do the show start over again. So everybody stand by as I tell Rich, and you guys don't get to hear this. The mics are hot. So hold on. Wait a minute. I have to reset our slideshow before I do that.
All right. The wonders of live broadcasts.
All right, here we go. We're going to, everybody, as I tell Rich, at every set of the show, the mics are hot, so stand by. Good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
And I'm Rich Carlson.
And we are the Scanner Guys. And we are live tonight on YouTube and Facebook this evening. So good evening and welcome. This is a special show where we've kind of tied in the holiday of Veterans Day with the subject of tonight's show. Rich, what's the topic of our show?
Military aviation, milair is our thing. That's a real popular thing to listen to. And being Veterans Day, that ties right in.
It certainly does. So we're so excited about you guys joining us this evening as we simulcast on the Scanner Guys Facebook page and the Scanner Guys YouTube account. So welcome everyone. We're going to dive into the show this evening, so let's do that right now. If you haven't already, make sure you sign up for the Scanner Guys newsletter on Scanner Guys' website, and also the Scanner Master one, as well, as you can see here. You can sign up for the Scanner Master newsletter right here at scannermaster.com, the Scanner Guys newsletter. You can sign up at thescannerguys.weebly.com. So we have dueling newsletters, but we want to remind you about the Scanner Master one because they're our sponsor. We're sending an email blast each and every week. The next email blast will be going out tomorrow at some point. We're going to be talking about some Spectrum Force base and portable mounts and the Jim pre-amplifier. So definitely check that out in the next email blast from Scanner Master. And let's continue on with the slideshow this evening. We're always looking for these, your stupid scanner tricks and your shack photos. We love seeing those. So email those over to thescannerguys@gmail.com. That's thescannerguys@gmail.com. And as always, the Scanner Guys are brought to you by Scanner Master. So, as Rich mentioned at the top of the show, Veterans Day. Remember everyone that served in our armed forces.
Yep. If you're Canadian, they call it a Remembrance Day. So the U.S. and Canada have fought together, not against each other, but fought together against the foes in the last 150 years. The only time we fought them was before Canada was actually Canada. So Also remember our Canadian Armed Forces guys and all the other allies. We get a lot of watchers from Australia and New Zealand, and all the other allies from the World War and the Cold War and all the other wars that we've had over the years. So, all the veterans, we just want to say thanks.
And thank you to every one of you that are in our audience tonight that have served. We appreciate everything that you've done for us to have the freedoms that we have. We really do appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And we'll continue on with the slideshow this evening and the scanner hint of the week. Rich, tell us a little bit about this.
All right, so we talked about this very briefly last week, and I had actually two different people call who didn't see the show last week, asking about this week at the Scanner Master hotline. And they wanted to have lights come up on the scanner when activity comes up. So if you've got one of the Uniden zip code type scanners, the 436, 536, SDS 100 or 200, or some of the more current Whistler radios, you can program each channel to have the light come up in a specific color. So when a police channel or talk group comes up, you can have it go blue. Is what the color I use, and red for fire, and I use yellow for highway department. You can pick whatever color you want to use for whatever channel you want, and you could on the Uniden scanners I know, and I'm not sure about the Whistlers. You can even make them flash when a specific channel comes up. On the 436, there is a little light just below the white. There it is, just below the white buttons. On the 536, the light's behind the knob, and on the SDS, there's a light above the big silver knob. So find out where that light is and keep an eye on it, and it's a great way. Unfortunately, it doesn't set up as a carrier-operated light. It's on a per-channel basis. So on a couple of my scanners, you'll see the little green light on the side. That is a carrier-operated light that I modded the scanner to add that in.
Yeah, I love the lights because especially if you're not able to, look at the screen fully. Let's say you're driving in a vehicle and you can see that illumination of a particular color. You've already know that it's a particular department. So without even looking at the screen, you can see, so it's blue, so clearly it's the police department, or red if it's the fire department. And so we're definitely excited about, using those color options. It's something that I definitely use. Excuse me. They're also on some of the Whistler radios as well. The GRE Whistler radios have a option to be able to do some lights as well, which is pretty neat. So it's not just a Uniden thing, but you can set this up on particular radios on that side as well. Yeah, and that's a pretty great feature, and that was one that when the Whistler 1065 was their top of the line scanner, that was a big advantage they had over over some of the other radios, was that you could program those color lights. And that is awesome. I just wish the 996 and the BCT-15s had that. I wouldn't have to do all that soldering on all those radios. I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, it's so cool to be able to have an additional layer of indication of who's communicating at a given time. Yeah, absolutely. So this is an interesting thing. Brothers or cousins? We've got, wait a minute. Which one's Rich? I'm just kidding. I'm the one in the red shirt, I think. I wasn't sure when I took the picture. This actually came up again. I was talking to a Scanner Guys fan who called to buy a radio, and he was saying, your voice sounds familiar. Are you the guy who looks like Curly? And I'm like, all right, he just lost his discount, and I charged him double for the radio. I admit, when I have my hair cut real short, I do have kind of a, kind of look to me. So I'm a big guy with very little hair and kind of chubby cheeks, and and they do a lot of that. So. Yes. Oh man. I mean, the antics with the Three Stooges. I mean, the the story of the Three Stooges, how they were so underpaid, was crazy, and how the the filmmaker, I don't remember which one they were under. They really underpaid them, and they really, I mean, a lot of the antics were actually, they got seriously injured.
Oh yeah, they did, and I think Mo was the only one who managed his money properly. He didn't make a lot of money, but he was able to save it and to actually invest properly and all that. So I know Curly was broke and Joe was broke, and who was the Larry was the other guy. I think he ended up being broke as well. So.
Yeah, they didn't get paid very much, so that was the other issue: mismanagement of money, and didn't get paid very much. So
yeah,
interesting story with the Three Stooges, that's for sure. So tonight we're talking about military aviation listening: bigger, better, and more exciting.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a whole lot of spectrum to cover with it. There's a lot of stuff to listen to, and even if you're nowhere near military air base, you're probably still going to be able to hear stuff. There's air-to-air traffic. There's refueling. There's air traffic control on military frequencies. So yeah, there's stuff to listen to even if you're nowhere near an air base. And if you're like where I'm at, it's just I'm overflown by F-35s and F-16s every day, and and they're flying around here all the time. My favorite airplane is an A-10, but unfortunately, I got to drive 150 miles to see those. So,
wow, it's very cool. So let's continue on here. So, Rich, tell us a little bit about the band. What is it all about?
Okay, so basically, the military aircraft band these days is from 225 to 380. It used to go up to about 400, but the frequencies between 380 and 400 have been reallocated mostly to on-base trunking systems. So 225 to 380, and so you got a whole lot of spectrum. That's 145 megahertz worth of spectrum, and it's used for a lot of the same things that the civil aviation bands are used for. And we'll get into that in a little bit. And most of the traffic up there is by the Air Force, but there's Navy. And there's some Army and Marine aircraft that use it as well. There's also a lot of other VHF usage. There's low band stuff, 40 megs, 35, 39, or 38 megs, 40 megs and such. And a lot of activity in the 138 to 144 range, and a little bit at 148 to 150 range. The Blue Angels, you'll find them on the 141 range quite a bit. And you got air traffic control not only at military bases, but often most civil airports, at least the bigger ones, will also have military frequencies that they'll simulcast on because they'll get military aircraft coming in there at times. And not all military aircraft have the civilian VHF bands in them. And then there's a lot of air-to-air traffic and target coordination. And the real interesting stuff is that air-to-air and TAC stuff. That is really a lot of neat stuff to listen to.
So you mentioned that some of the military aircraft don't have the civilian capabilities. So how does that work when they're in the air, actually? Because they still have to work with them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So most air route traffic control, the center traffic, have paired military channels. So if the center traffic is at 132.55, they may have a military channel of 257.2 on that particular tower, and all the other towers will have a military channel, just basically the same usage as the civilian channels.
Now, is that simulcast at that center level or no? Or it is?
Yeah. So that when the center operator or the tower at the airport, when the center talks, he'll actually transmit on both the military side and the VHF civilian side at the same time. And the civil aircraft will answer on the VHF, and the military aircraft will answer on the UHF, both at the airports and on the centers.
So, if I understand that correctly, the they're not going to hear one another, the two planes, because they're in two separate frequencies. Is that right?
Yeah, the civil aircraft will not hear the military aircraft, but they will hear the center operator talking to the military aircraft because they're simulcasting on both channels at the same time.
I get you.
A couple of the quick questions. It is almost entirely AM on the military aircraft band.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to know. So you're only going to hear one side of the conversation if he's communicating whether to the mill or the commercial.
Right, exactly. Now, if you are in a position to be able to hear the aircraft as well, if you're listening to the military side, yeah, you're going to hear the aircraft. It's just a regular AM, two-way radio, just like any other aircraft. It just operates on different frequencies. So where I'm at, I hear the aircraft all the time. When I lived in Chicago, there was a lot less military traffic, but I happen to live a couple miles away from a transmitter that for the FAA, and I was able to hear the military side. Every once in a great while, I'd actually hear the aircraft.
I see. That's cool. So, I mean, you could set up your scanners. So if you wanted to focus on milair, you could just listen to the milair side of things and not listen to all the commercial traffic busyness.
Yeah, exactly.
To a degree.
Yeah, exactly. So now, again, if you're close enough to hear the center tower itself, the center operator, because remember, the center operator might be, for my area, the center operator is in Albuquerque, but I can still hear him because they've got towers scattered throughout the entire Western USA that they cover. So he's maybe got 100 different towers, and they've got it broken down into sectors. And there'll be one channel used for this sector, another channel used for that sector, and a third channel used for that other sector over there. So the center operator will be on one of those sector channels, and if I'm close enough to hear that, I'll hear that, but I'll only hear the aircraft, obviously, if the aircraft is someplace close to me. You can usually hear the aircraft a lot further away than the center operator as well.
Yeah, because it's all that line of sight, basically. Being up in the air, you have better line of sight versus being on the ground, where you've got obstacles in the way, such as structures, the land, where there's valleys and hills and mountains in between. So it's very much very similar to railroads in that sense. A lot of times with railroads, you can hear the dispatch because they're transmitting off of different towers. Yeah. In this case, it's a little bit different. It's aviation in the air. And the same thing, you're only able to hear that train when it's close to you. The same thing with a plane. You're only able to hear it when it's in a good line of sight of you.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing for our Facebook watchers tonight, if the browser that you're using is not the active browser, if you're not clicked into it, the video will stop on where it was when you clicked out of it. So if you're using multiple browsers, you have to keep your mouse clicked into the Facebook browser, or the video is going to stop, so you won't be seeing the action. You'll be able to hear it, but you won't be able to see it.
Yeah, it's a way that Facebook can reduce down bandwidth, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because video takes up a lot of bandwidth on their servers. We'll continue on with the slideshow presentation. In case you're just joining us this evening, we're talking about milair and monitoring it. So Rich is taking the lead on this one tonight because he's very familiar with it, and we'll continue on. So air traffic control. We kind of dipped into this a little bit in the last slide.
Yeah. If you're near a major airport, chances are they're going to have military frequencies paired with the civil channels for the main things, the tower, the ground, the ATIS channels. So even if they don't have a lot of military activity there, most of the larger airports are going to have that. O'Hare Airport, not a lot of military stuff there anymore. There used to be a lot of military stuff there, but nowadays there's not. But they still transmit simulcast some of the tower channels and the ground channels on the UHF channels for any military aircraft that might happen to be transiting through the area. Phoenix, where I live, the Sky Harbor Airport, the big civilian airport in just east of downtown Phoenix, they actually have an active reserve component there with KC-135s. So there's a lot of military aircraft activity at Phoenix. So if your airport has military activity, you'll hear a lot of stuff. If they don't, chances are at least you can hear the tower operator simulcasting on the military side.
which is really neat. In case some of you are just joining us, make sure you like the Scanner Guys Facebook page. I know a lot of you had to make the switch this evening, so make sure you hit that like button. We'll continue on with this great slideshow presentation. Whoa, so we got some frequencies here, Rich. So let's kind of dive into this. What does this frequency layout mean for us scanner listeners?
So these are some of the more common military aircraft frequencies that are used around the country. There's hundreds and thousands of different frequencies. There's 155 megahertz of spectrum. Thanks, Joe. And you break that down to 25 kilohertz spacing, and there's a lot of spectrum to cover. Now, these are some of the more common ones. 243.0 is the military equivalent to 121.5. It's the what they call guard, or the emergency channel. So if there's a aircraft down, or there's an aircraft that's lost his other radios, a lot of times they'll call them on guard. Same use that you'll hear on 121.5. If you've got a scanner and you like military aircraft, make sure that's channel 1 in your scanner. 257.8 is a very common control tower for military aircraft at civilian airports and or bases. So it just happened to be, pretty common for it. And there's a bunch of other stuff. The flight service stations, which is not much used anymore. Weather advisory channels. 3030 or 303.0, that they call that Winchester because 3030 was a rifle cartridge. And there's a bunch of others. And the next slide will have even more. The picture is, I took it at an open house. Just
going to ask you that. Tell us about that.
All right. So I took that in the cockpit of an aircraft, and this is 25 years ago, so I don't remember what type of aircraft it was. But they left the frequency card out, so I grabbed the picture, and you'll see that a little bit more clear on the next slide.
All right, we'll go to the next slide here.
It's coming up. It'll be on one of the coming up slides. So,
okay. So, Rich, what can you tell us about this here with these other frequencies?
Yeah. All right, well, these are just a couple more common ones. 126.2, very commonly used as a tower frequency on the VHF side for civilian tower frequency at military bases. So when I lived in Illinois, I used to live right next to Glenview Naval Air Station, which unfortunately is closed now. But when it was open, their VHF tower was 126.2 paired with their military tower. And some of my scanners didn't have military air, so I could still listen to the tower operations by listening to 126.2. Most air bases have a VHF and a UHF. Most of the military aircraft will answer on the UHF, but any civilian aircraft that operate in or around that base obviously would operate on the VHF tower. 269.9 is a very commonly used as an ATIS channel at military airports with military facilities. It's the ATIS channel at a bunch of different military and civilian airports with military operations.
Those ATIS channels, what are those?
Automatic Terminal Identification Information System. It's a 24/7 transmitter that broadcasts information about the airport that the pilot is going to need to fly into or out of the airport. The active runways, the current weather and wind conditions, any obstructions, and any special information that the airman is going to need to transit through the airport to fly into or fly out of. When you are calling the tower for the first time, when you're arriving at an airport or leaving from the airport, you have to tell them what ATIS message you have. And what they do with the ATIS messages is, as part of the recording, they say, Luke Air Force Base ATIS, ATIS message alpha, or whatever the phonetics that they're using. And you have to tell the tower that you have ATIS or information alpha so that they know that you have the current information about the airport. And if the ATIS changes, they'll get a new letter.
Cool. Okay. Where were you? You were at the next one.
257.8. We talked about that one earlier. It's a common tower frequency at civil airports, military facilities. And again, it's going to be paired with one of the local VHF channels. And the Air Force likes to use channel frequency for air-to-air stuff with kind of cool names that apply to the number. 303.0 is a common air-to-air channel, and they call it 3030 or Winchester. 300.6, 30.6. 357 is Magnum, 357 Magnum. So I guess the guys who pick these names like guns.
Yeah.
And there's bunches of them. I mean, there's all kinds of different channels with fun names. So look at Radio Reference. There's a bunch listed there, and there's some more sources we'll talk about in a little bit.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I mean, Radio Reference is an awesome source for frequencies, and as we talked about in the last broadcast when we were talking about the unit and database scanners, such as your STS 100, 200, and your 436, 536, and Home Patrol 1 and 2, you can create a favorites list that will act as a service search to milair frequencies. So you can definitely do that as well. So that's a real good broadcast we had last week. In case you missed that, you can catch that on our YouTube channel. Let's continue on. Looks like, Rich, we've got that blown up image so we can kind of see what was on there. Let's dive into this slide here. Searching. What a transition. I was talking about searching, and here we go. So here we go.
So the military aircraft band is huge, 155 megahertz. It starts at 225, goes up to 380. So you can search through that, but it's going to take forever to get through all of that. So if you're a goof like me, you do it with multiple scanners. I've got 10 BCT 15s. 10 of them. And I have each one of those assigned. So there's 155 megahertz. I have each one assigned to 15 megahertz of spectrum, and one of them assigned to 20. And I use those, split up into 10 chunks. So that way I've got 10 scanners actually going through all the military aircraft channel, searching and looking for new stuff. And I find about once when I first started, I found a lot of them all the time. But nowadays, I find about 1 or 2 new channels every week that I haven't heard before. And I'll check those through various databases, and I'll find, hey, somebody found this 6 months ago, and every once in a while, I'll get one that nobody else has seen. And I'll usually, put those up at Radio Reference or on one of the Facebook groups as well. But I do keep a list of all the hits that I have that I don't recognize, and then I'll check them for activity. And the nice thing about that is I can break it up, and I have a much better chance of finding a hit because now I'm only going through 15 megahertz of spectrum instead of 155.
Yeah.
The picture there is the frequency card from that photo from a couple of slides ago, blown up to where you can actually read it. So this was from an aircraft that was based in out of Volk Field in northern Wisconsin. And there is a bunch of the frequencies. They have both UHF and VHF channels on that one. So it might have been a transport aircraft. A lot of those have both radios.
Nice. I see that. You've got the milair on the left of the screen, and then on the right you've got the commercial. Yeah,
and my Midwestern friends will probably recognize some of those frequencies and channel names as well. So, and so on 380 to 406, which used to be part of the military aircraft band, it's been reallocated for base operations for the most part. P-25. There are a few aircraft that will still use those because the frequencies are still in the radios, and it's kind of hard to tell guys not to use them. And if your radio supports multiple search limits, like you got a BCT 15 or 15X, you can set up to 10 search limits, and you can pick different segments. So what I do on my 15s is I have all of them programmed exactly the same. And group number 1 is going to be 225 to 240, and search limit number 2 is going to be 240 to 255, and so forth. So I have 10 radios all programmed identically, and then I just, turn radio number 1 on, limit number 1 and number 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So that way, if I want to hold on one channel and stick it on there for a while, then I'll just pop up group number 2 on one of the other radios because that other radio stopped searching. It's a great system for me. A lot of people have done similar things with SDRs, and that's a great way to do it. So if you're an SDR person, my buddy Joe would be doing this with the whole rack of SDRs. So, and if you've got software that supports virtual control and logging, like Arc XT Pro or Arc 15 Pro or whatever software you're using, use that logging feature so that way you can go back through the log and see I got 17 hits on 330.5, and then you listen to 330.5 and kind of figure out what it is. If your radio supports recording, then you can, and you've got the means to do so, maybe record it, and then you can go back and listen to them, figure out what they're using.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think it's a great system that you have there. Having the whole entire thing broken out into sections. That's going to increase your ability to be able to not miss a hit. I mean, having it scan the whole band, it's going to take it longer to go through it. I mean, another thing. Let's say you're not blessed with a whole bunch of scanners. You may want to separate it out still, and then maybe on Monday you run a certain section. On Tuesday you run another section. Wednesday you run another section. And then it gives you the ability to scan and search a lot faster, finding these channels. But yeah, if you have the ability like Rich and you have more than one radio, that is the smartest way to do it because you're able to capture more hits.
Yeah, and if with the BCT 15X, they're only $170, something like that. They're a very inexpensive radio in the grand scheme of things, and they work very well on both civil and military aircraft frequencies. And so if you've got the money, get a couple of them and split it out. And if you're kind of obsessed like I am, get 10 of them. So.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, a lot of you probably go to the air shows. The ultimate radio, I would say, is the 125 AT. It's not a lot of money as well. I mean, this is, your 15X is very affordable, your 125 AT, and they both cover milair. So, I mean, and then if you own one of these radios already, you're already half the battle's done. You can start, dipping your toe into milair.
Yeah, and most scanners will actually cover military aircraft, at least the current ones. So even if you don't have one of those scanners, try it with your existing scanner. And again, just be patient. I'll get into the antenna a bit in just a minute on that. I'm actually, along JASC, I'm actually using my ST2 for the military aircraft. That seems to be the best of my antenna farm in my attic. So I have that plugged into two multi-couplers, actually three multi-couplers share that ST2 antenna, and all the BCT 15s are on an ST2. I wish those were still made. Gotta be patient. There's a whole lot of spectrum. Air-to-air channels are often selected on an ad hoc basis. So what they use today might not be used tomorrow. Okay, so the 15 search is faster than the 986. Okay.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And keep a list of what you find. And I have a Word document on my computer, and I keep a icon on the desktop. So when I find something new, I just add it to that. And then later on, I can figure out, okay, I'm going to go through and say, okay, 269.7. Okay, I heard that last month. Or, oh, that's a new one for me. And if you're at or near a military air base, turn on close call. I'm actually 25 miles from the Air Force Base, but they overfly me all the time. And I actually live within the confines of a MOA. And about 3 or 4 miles to my northeast, there is a former auxiliary field for my Air Force Base from World War II that they have maintained, and they use that for shooting approaches, for practice approaches, so they don't have to do it at the base. And also, they have some outbuildings out there, and they use those for target acquisition practice. So there'll be a guy with a man pack, and they'll be directing aircraft in, just like they were directing in for live fire, except the only thing they're not doing is they're not shooting, which is probably good for me. So, and so I get close call hits on that stuff. So, yeah, Rory's got a notepad pinned onto his wall next to his scanner. Yeah, absolutely. Take a note. I happen to throw it onto a computer because my computer's right here. Keep a notepad. Do something so you keep an eye on it.
Yeah, we'll continue on with the next slide here. So let's take a look at it. So here is some frequency sources, Rich, that we can certainly keep in mind. So radio reference, as we mentioned, is a big one. And I imagine, I belong to probably dozens and dozens of rail fanning Facebook groups. And I bet you there's a ton of milair ones out there. Am I right?
Yeah, there are. And IO groups, if you're into email lists, also has a bunch of them. A little aside here, if you use Yahoo groups, you won't be for long because they're going away sometime next month. So if anything that's been on Yahoo groups, most of that is switched over to IO groups, and Yahoo groups will be going away soon, sometime in December, I think. So, and that those are good forums to use. And again, radio reference is always going to be your best bet. You can still download some FAA and Department of Defense guides. They did take a lot of that stuff off the publicly accessible internet, but sometimes you can still find them from other sources. And even the standard public FAA guides will have a lot of military frequencies. The center frequencies, the tower frequencies for the military stuff are listed on those. So if you download the chart for your local airport, if they have military channel assignments, they'll be on the local chart.
Cool. These are all good things to keep in mind regarding frequency sources. Yeah. So we'll continue on here. We've already talked about the stars of tonight's show. What scanners work best with milair? Of course, Uniden has two prime choices. Most current scanners will operate on the particular band, which is 225 to 380 megahertz. The BCT15X and the 125AT are the ideal radios, coming in with a low price and great coverage, and they're just overall great units. So the BCT15X, it's an analog receiver along with the 125AT, but this is what you need. Something simple. The great thing about the 15X, it's great for in the vehicle or as part of your home shack. If you're going to be out and about, portable radio is going to be ideal, especially if you're going to those air shows. You definitely want to bring a radio because not only watching the show in the sky, it's great to be able to hear the communication, at the show. So definitely that portable scanner will come into in handy.
Yeah, and you don't have to buy the most expensive, fanciest scanner out there. I mean, an SDS 100 will work fine, but you're going to spend, for the same money, you can get 5 or 6 125s. So
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You don't really need the most expensive. I mean, if you already have it, you can use it. But if you're looking for a particular radio that's just dedicated to this band, you certainly can take a look at it. All right, let's dive into the next slide. Looks like, wow, is that it for slides today, I guess, Rich?
Yeah, I guess so. I thought I had one more, but I guess that was the last one. So
I
we do have a
think-
lot of comments to go through tonight too. So
Yeah, so let's talk about tonight's show is milair, and then next week's show we're going to talk about creating the perfect scanner package, either for yourself or for someone that's getting into the hobby. We're gonna talk about various things that you can get with your scanner. So if you're trying to put together a gift package for yourself or for someone else, this is going to be the show to watch. We're going to cover some of those cool accessories that you may already own the scanner and you want to get that particular item because, it could help you. That show will be live Wednesday, November the 8th, the 18th already, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on YouTube. If they work out all their issues, we'll be live there. If not, we'll be doing another one of these simulcasts. So I just want to remind everybody that how to make the switch over to Facebook. Make sure you like the page because, in case YouTube has some issues, we can jump over there like we did tonight and do this.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, like I say, this is the first time that we've had a problem with YouTube since we've switched over to YouTube. So keep Facebook on as a backup just in case. So I'm sure even Linus Tech Tips would be having problems tonight.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, when it's out of our hands. And thankfully, we've got, as somebody mentioned earlier, the backup transmitter. So we're on the backup transmitter right now. So the primary transmitter is not working so good. Black Friday and Cyber Monday. We're starting to get some questions about that. A lot of stores, just because of the issues that have been going on with COVID, have been running their sales a little bit earlier. We are actually started our holiday email blasts a couple of weeks ago. So we're running that as usual. So we're sending those out. There will be some deals that are coming up. We've got a couple of packages out there which you actually can save some money. Past emails that I've sent out, we had a 996P2 package and we had a 436 package and a Home Patrol 2 package. They're on our website, scannermaster.com. If you go under scanners, and then you'll see scanner packages. All the packages are there, and they're usually priced a lot cheaper in the package versus creating your own package. There's some additional discounting to these pre-made packages. So definitely check out scannermaster.com and certainly bookmark it. Check it often.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into some of these questions. I saw them flowing in throughout the whole entire the slideshow presentation. So let's dive into that.
All right, well, I'm going to give just a couple of shout outs, but everybody who I don't give a direct shout out to, we do read every comment, but we usually try to get some of the highlights. I want to give a shout out to Chris. I talked to Chris this week, and we got him set up with the new scanner. So congratulations, Chris, and watch your email for the delivery on that.
He's celebrating a birthday today, if I remember correctly.
Oh, is it his birthday today?
Yeah, I believe Chris Schultz that watches us each and every week. I think today is his birthday.
Oh, well, if it's your birthday, Chris, happy birthday. If not, happy birthday anyway.
Happy birthday. Thank you so much. He watches us each and every week, and we appreciate, him being a loyal fan there. And I'm almost 99% certain he said it was the 11th. So happy birthday to you, buddy.
All righty. And he had a question about, like back in 1871, they had the big Chicago fire. And how did they coordinate all that without radios? I mean, that was 100 years, well, it was 50 years before they invented radio for the most part. And a lot of that was, there was some phone lines in use by then, but really not. And a lot of that stuff was done by runners. Bullhorns, and I'm not talking electronic ones. I'm talking guys with big dunce cap cones yelling at the fire scene. There was, like I say, you didn't have a lot of phones. You didn't have any radio any electronics or anything like that. It was all done very manually. And they would send a guy to the firehouse, or they had a guy. They would have fire watches, and they would have a guy on a raised tower, basically, and he'd be watching for fires. And if there was fires, he'd ring the bell, and he would point, okay, it's 6 blocks that way. So, stuff that we take for granted, they just didn't have back then. So, Les watches a lot of military aircraft in his area, some vintage stuff. There's a big hobby of warbirds where people will buy and restore military aircraft, obviously demilitarized. There's no weaponry on them, and a lot of them are old. There's P-51 Mustangs, a lot of World War II aircraft, now Vietnam era aircraft, Korean era aircraft that are very popular. So there's a lot of people who do that. There are even people who have fighter jets. There's a Czechoslovakian made fighter jet from the Eastern Bloc that are very popular because they would sell them to civilians, and they're relatively inexpensive. And you see a lot of them, and I don't remember their L-35s or something like that. They're basically fighter trainers, and relatively inexpensive. Rockford Airport, there's a group of about a half a dozen of these things up there, and these guys fly out every weekend. There's you're going to see a lot of that. So those are Les sees a lot of that stuff. He sees a lot of the C-130 Hercules, a lot of helicopters, Lancaster bombers. I was going to say it's got to be Canadian then. The Snowbirds in Ottawa, that's the capital. There's a great military aircraft museum at one of the airports in Ottawa that I've been to. And if you've never been there, Les, try to get there. I'm sure you've been there, though. Chris Wilson is 2 miles from a Marine Corps Air Station. So he gets buzzed by F-35s every day, which is really cool. And he says he watches them land vertically. You can get the F-35 with the VTOL, the vertical takeoff and landing mod or feature. Anthony reminds us 311.0 and 323.8 emergency action messages. That was the old Strategic Air Command, and I'm not sure what they call that nowadays, but that was very popular back in the Cold War time, and I'm sure they still do EAMs nowadays. Joe's got 2 bases near him, China Lake and Edward, so he must be in Southern California. I've been through that area a few times, and driving by Edwards Air Force Base, it's huge. The place it's like the size of Delaware, and it's absolutely huge. And then there's a lot of aircraft going in and out of there. It's so big that they use that for an alternate landing spot for the space shuttle. Ira asked if the military aircraft band was AM or FM. The vast majority of it is AM. There are some FM activities, but the majority of the military aircraft band is AM. And it's usually 25 kilohertz spacing, although most of the times they operate on the 50 kilohertz channels, or even the 100 kilohertz channels. So it's 257.1, 257.2, 257.3, but they do have 25 and 50 kilohertz spacing availability. Jason used to fly a P-3C Orion. It had a VHF radio, so they'd use that when they operate at civilian airports. So he could also hear the civilian. So those type of aircraft that commonly operate in civilian airports, they will have both VHF and UHF. Lincoln's near Miramar, which has got to be San Diego, if I recall correctly. And Dave asked about space between the transmit and the receive frequency. And Anthony answers that question very well. Thank you. It's almost entirely simplex. So the aircraft and the base or the center or the tower are all operating on the same frequency. I don't think there's any semi-duplex on military aircraft that I've heard. There might be some tactical stuff like that, but I've never heard it. So Jim says when he listens to the tower has both UHF and VHF listed. He's not sure what the difference is. We spoke about this a while back on the show. Oftentimes they have both channels. The military aircraft who have no VHF radios will operate on the UHF radio, and this way they can talk back and forth to the tower. When the tower talks, he'll transmit on both channels at the same time, and the civilian aircraft will answer back on VHF, and the military aircraft will answer back on UHF. And the military aircraft that tends to have VHF radios oftentimes are the larger aircraft, the transport aircraft. They have to operate on into and out of civilian aircraft more often. Fighter jets are usually kind of pinched for space, so they normally don't have civilian radios, with an exception. The aircraft that are used for the flight demonstration teams, the Blue Angels, the Snowbirds, the what's the Navy one? There's the Blue Thunderbirds is the other one.
Unfortunately, I don't know enough about this to be able to come in and help you.
It's my understanding that they tend to have the VHF radios because they often will operate out of a civilian airport when they're doing their shows. So most fighters won't have VHF, but those flights normally will.
I mean, it's pretty amazing what you mentioned. A lot of even the military bases will simulcast on the tower, which is kind of a good thing in case of ever a commercial plane had to do an emergency landing. They have the ability to use their runways, which is great.
Yeah, and the other thing too is a lot of times a civilian aircraft will either have to overfly or encroach upon the airspace of a military base. So, like Luke Air Force Base, which is on the west side of the Phoenix area, the far west suburbs of Phoenix. There's a lot of civilian aircraft operations here, and the restricted airspace around the airport is relatively large. And there are times when a civilian aircraft has legitimate reason to be in that airspace. So if they have to do that, they have to contact the tower at Luke before they can approach on what's called their Class C airspace, the airspace that's restricted around the airport, or in this case, the airbase. It's much more serious to encroach upon a military airbase than it is on a civilian. They typically aren't going to shoot you down if you happen to, skirt the edge of a civilian aircraft airspace. But you try that. Yeah, you try that at a military airbase, and and I'm not sure if they do this in a lot of other areas, but in the Phoenix area, we have what's called RAPCON, or Radar Approach Communications, and it's run by the military, in this case, Luke Air Force Base, and they coordinate air traffic in certain areas around the base, even outside the Class C airspace, so that they don't have conflict between military aircraft flying in and out of the base and the civilian aircraft that are transiting the areas around it, or going through the military operating area, which is, up here where I live. I live within the confines of one of the modes. And like I say, just a couple miles to my north, I have that it's an abandoned airstrip, they called it an auxiliary field, which for Luke Air Force, I think built like 10 or 15 of these things around the valley. A couple of them still exist as civilian airports. And this one, you can still see where the runway is, but they built approach equipment there so that the F-35s and F-16s can practice their approaches, and then they peel off before they touch the ground because their runway is no longer usable. But again, they use that for practice. And then
so that's basically like what they call a touch and go.
No, they don't even, but they don't touch.
They don't touch at all. They don't
touch. There's no place to touch. The runway is cactus covered. So
Wow. So they're just practicing going in, and then
Right.
they're lifting off before they would touch.
Yeah, exactly. And they're practicing their ILS approaches. And there's a couple of civilian airports now that used to be auxiliary Air Force bases during World War II. Buckeye Airport and I think Goodyear. There's a few of them around that are former military airports that are now being used for civilian. And then there's a separate base, 50 miles, 60 miles south of me in a town called Gila Bend, which is still active and still being used. And then just south of there, there's a range, the Goldwater Range, which is this huge millions of acres of desert land that's all fenced off, and it's an active bombing range. So you'll have military aircraft come in there, and they're dropping live ordnance. Sometimes they're duds, or not duds, but non-live ordnance. They still look the same, and they practice for target acquisition and targeting and stuff. And they blow stuff up. That's and there's another big area out in Yuma, which is 150 miles away, but and that's what they do here. That's they got to practice someplace, and this is a good place to do it. Refueling is a huge radio thing. My buddy Ted, who passed away a couple of years ago, was a huge military air refueling fan, and he knew everything there was about military aircraft, military air refueling routes. And they have specific routes they use and specific areas and such. And I had a buddy of mine who was in the Air Force years ago, and he got me a ride in a B-52, and we got to do a refueling, and that's cool to be flying up behind a KC-135 with a boom attached to it, and all of a sudden you hear when the thing pops in there. That was just cool. I was just like, this is too cool for school stuff here. Ron is up in Michigan, and he hears a lot of activity for Camp Grayling. And they also use their state digital system for some of their ground activities. So, yeah. You'll see some military air bases operate on the civilian radio systems as well to coordinate things for fire and police. But for military aircraft, obviously, it's all going to be in that UHF stuff. And Ron continues. A couple of them got invited up to the tower at Camp Grayling, air to ground with A-10s. They did flybys, and they did use live fire and drop bombs from 1,500 feet. So if you ever get a chance and you want to see something cool, go to YouTube and search out videos of the A-10 Warthog. And the A-10 Warthog is the most cool aircraft ever built. It's a flying tank with a huge Gatling gun. They built the aircraft around this Gatling gun, and this thing shoots, I don't know how many hundreds of rounds per minute, and it sounds like a rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. And it's intended as a close air support aircraft. The Air Force Base over in Tucson, Davis Mountain, flies A-10s. And if you ever get a chance to see these guys flying, they are awesome. They are very good at very slow flight. The pilot sits in a titanium bathtub that protects him from being shot at on the ground by small arms. And he's got these two big honking engines on the sides. And it's just an awesome aircraft. It's just, there's nothing like an A-10. So visibility is another thing they talk about on the ATIS channels. So they'll talk about on the ATIS, they'll talk about the active runways, the winds and weather conditions, how much visibility. There's 3 miles of visibility, and taxiway alpha is closed. Watch out for lawnmower guys working on alongside the runway. That kind of stuff is going to be on your ATIS. Another neat thing about ATIS channels is you can use those as beacons, kind of like you would do for the weather channels. You can see how your antenna system or your radio is working. You tune into an ATIS channel that you should be able to hear. If you're hearing it, then your radio works. If you're not hearing it, there's something wrong. Let's see here. 228.9 is a good frequency to have in the scanner. It's the primary emergency scramble channel. So, Anthony, thank you for that. So 228.9, it's a great one. Scramble is when you see the guys running to the airport, running across the tarmac to hop on the airplane to take off. That's a scramble. They're being sent out. So, they used to practice that. Well, I'm sure they still do. They practice that all the time. Back during the Cold War, they did that all the time. A lot more practice. Ron's saying that the A-10s out of Selfridge Air Force Base go over his house at 800 feet and do touch and goes. So, and he lists a bunch of the call signs they use: Tejas, Demon, Yalta, Bosun. They also have B1, B1Bs, B-52s, F-16s. They come in, they do live fires. So, Camp Grayling is up in the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. And it's another one of the big military bases. There's several of them across the country, and there used to be a lot more that they've closed a lot since the Cold War ended. Joe likes the way I load share on my BCT-15s. Again, if you've got them, use them. Ron writes, a couple of us. We already talked about. We already did that one, didn't we? So Ron must have posted that one twice. All righty. So, Joe says it's 10 times the likelihood of catching something versus only having one scanner. So, Bill's got a 396. That does military aircraft. Again, most scanners do. But before you buy one, if you're interested, double check to make sure. Let's see here. We talked about the antennas. Chris wrote that his 15 searches faster than his 996. And Joe adds a good point on this one. Check that your steps are set the same on both scanners. I have the default steps for some reason on that on military aircraft band is 12.5. So I set mine to 25, and I think I even tried setting to 50 because there's very little use of the 25 channels. So I've set mine to 50 kilohertz spacing, I think. But, try that and go there. So, but they are 25 kilohertz apart, but they very rarely use those 25 channels. They use the 50s and the 100s most. Jay works the air show, so he uses an A6. I actually have an A14. And I'm not sure if the A6 has got is a military version or a civilian version, but I have an A14 that I picked up really cheap. It's a aviation band two-way radio. So, of course, I don't transmit on it, but it's a great receiver.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those, there's some pretty good two-way radios that are out there. If you know what you're doing, turn the transmit off, and it makes a really good receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you using a different mic this week?
No.
A little mic, or are you using the big one?
I'm using the, I just realized it. Carmen asked me about that, and I went to go check the settings, and it was coming off of a different microphone. But I'm actually on the RE20 right now. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you for realizing that. So I went to go look at the settings, and I saw I was pointed at an onboard mic, so it should sound a lot better now. I mean, thankfully, I didn't do a lot of talking, but yeah.
Yeah, this is more the Curly show than the Mo show. So
yeah, I'll let Rich get a little bit of a drink in there. So yeah, we're definitely using the RE20 now. Thank you, Carmen, for that. The last air show at Luke Air Force Base, radios and scanners were prohibited. That's interesting. Why would they do that?
I probably for security purposes. Maybe they don't. That way, they don't have to figure out if you've got a transmitting radio versus just a receiver. And again, you're on a military base, so they can make the rules. and they also have again, with security issues, ever since 9/11, of course, the security has been, quite a bit higher than it was before.
That's for sure. Yeah, so that kind of makes sense. I mean, for someone that has a scanner, there's no harm or foul. You can't transmit on it, but on a two-way radio, if it's not programmed properly, you could transmit on it by accident and cause issues.
Yeah, and those guys are not radio experts, so they probably wouldn't know the difference between a transmitting and a receiver. So, Randy uses Google Drive to store his frequencies. That's a great way. That way you can view them from the computer.
Yeah, I can. I mean, with Google Drive, you have basically the Office suite. As part of, you have Google Docs, you have Google Sheets, which is your Excel. There's even what we're used for this broadcast each and every week. We use Google Slides, and that's so Rich and I can actually edit this, together. And share this. So what you're actually visualizing. I mean, the Google Slides, the great thing about it, if you are using Google Drive and you are using, you have a smartphone, you can download the Google app. And let's say you've created a sheet of frequencies and you want to be able to access it remotely. It's great because you can pull it up right on your phone. And let's say you're going to make an adjustment out in the field with your scanner. You can, oh, shoot, I forgot this frequency. What is it now? Go in, pop it into the scanner, and you're good to go.
Absolutely. By the way, it does seem that YouTube is working again, at least at here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What is our show for the 25th of November?
The 25th of November. We are. It's Ask the Scanner Guys. It's a Thanksgiving Eve show. So we're going to be talking about anything that's come up into topics. We actually have the Thanksgiving Eve, and then we have Christmas Eve show, which is another Ask the Scanner Guys. So you're going to get us during the holiday week for both Thanksgiving and Christmas. The Christmas one will be Christmas Eve because it'll be on the 23rd.
All right, so we'll definitely talk about some shopping mall stuff on the 25th as well. Although I would imagine that with the coronavirus going on, the malls are going to be it's going to be different this year for sure. There's no way to predict how it's really going to be. So
yeah, I think what's going to actually happen is a lot of major stores like Target, Walmart, Best Buy are running their Black Friday deals throughout the month. So it's not, standing in line. That's what it seems like. The cool thing about, when you go to the mall, bring your scanner. You'll be able to find all those two-way radios that they're using and be able to listen in to the communications.
That's one reason I actually like going to the mall. My wife will go into shopping, and I'll be walking around with my 125 or my 325 in my shirt pocket with a couple of Apple earbuds. So people think I'm just listening to tunes or something like that, but I'm listening to the scanner, and it's people don't know it, and it's great. And at the mall, we'll talk about this next time out. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to listen to at the mall.
Yeah, and the other cool thing that you can do too is being able to figure out if you've got it in a service search or close call, you can kind of play a game while your wife's shopping or your spouse is shopping. If which store is it? And figure out which one it is, because everybody in the mall is using radios.
Oh yeah. Well, the fun thing about that is to walk into a boutique, one of these little stops, and there's 3 people working in the store, and they all 3 have radios, and one of them will say, "Oh, a guy with a red shirt walked in," and that must be me.
That's you. Yep.
So actually, this is black this week, but I wear a red shirt when I walk in the mall. So
yeah, that's your mall shirt, right?
Yeah, my mall shirt. There you go. Well, I always have a pocket shirt on. They walk around the mall, so I can put my scanner in there. And really the only thing that sticks out is the antenna. And nobody's going to really notice that. So are we going to continue live streaming on Facebook, or is it a one-time thing?
More than likely, this is going to be a one-time thing as long as YouTube cooperates. So you can definitely join us on our YouTube account. It's the partner channel, which is the Scanner Guys on YouTube. So definitely join us over there next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, where we're going to be covering the topic that's on your screen right now, creating the perfect scanner gift package. And we're going to talk about some of those accessories you can get with your scanner. Even though you may already own the scanner, we're going to cover some of those accessories that you may want to consider purchasing. Or if you're looking to get a scanner for a loved one or a friend, we're going to give you some tips on putting together the perfect package.
Absolutely. Mark asks when we're going to have the 125 back in stock.
We were talking about that before the broadcast, the pre-show, and there was some colorful talk. The Scanner Guys unplugged, and we were basically disappointed and grunting and groaning about the 125 being out of stock. So we feel your pain. Hopefully should be back in stock soon. This is a fan favorite of Rich and I, the 125 AT. I mean, look, we both have it within arm's reach, so it's a favorite. So hopefully we'll be getting those in soon. One of the best, I would say the best entry-level portable scanners out in the market today.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't need digital and don't need trunking, that 125 is awesome. And with this whole coronavirus thing, keeping things like this in stock is difficult. Number one, there's a lot of demand because people want stuff to do. And number two, there's not a lot of supply because they come in from overseas, and the supply chains and the transportation routes are quite a bit disrupted. So let's see here. L-39. That was the name of that Czechoslovakian aircraft that I was talking about. It's a jet trainer that are very popular with the warbird crowd because, I mean, if you're going to fly, you want to fly a jet, and you want to fly a fighter jet, and the L-39 is a affordable way of getting into it. If you've got $500,000 to spend and being able to spend $1,000 an hour to fly it, hey, do it. So thank you, Jay and Rory. Appreciate that. F-35D is the vertical landing version of the F-35. There are several versions of the F-35. They're basically trying to make it as the one-size-fit-all plane for the for NATO users. So you've got the vertical takeoff and landing in the D version, and there's the F-35C, and I think there's a version made to fly off aircraft carriers and such. So it's going to be a very big aircraft, and I hope that it works out.
Well, since there's so many of these planes, I wonder if eventually we do a bonus Scanner Guys episode, and you can kind of show us some images of these planes. And sounds like you know a lot about these planes, so you could probably give us a little bit of differences and a little bit of history on each one. That could be a good bonus episode of the Scanner Guys.
Yeah, maybe we'll put something together. That'd be kind of fun. So. Barry's got C-5s and C-17s out of Dover. I like the big transport aircraft. I'll watch C-130s and C-5s and C-17s and KC-10s and 135s. I'll watch those. I think those are much more interesting than fighter jets. But most people like the fighter jets because they're cool and they're fast, and so I like the big transport planes. So yeah.
So the transport planes, some of these are actually used when the president or vice president travels because they got to bring in all the various automotive counterparts, right?
Yeah, and they bring in the helicopters, they bring in the Beast, the motorcade vehicles, and they bring all that stuff in a couple of days ahead of time, and then they got to fly them all back. So last time, a couple of years ago when the president was here in Phoenix, I saw the C-17s and C-5 come in. I was actually flying in back to Phoenix from wherever I was at, and they were on the tarmac. And a couple of days later, I was on my way down to someplace down in that range, probably going to IKEA or something like that. And then I saw the C5s taking off. So there were two of them, and they both took off. One took off and then made a loop, and then the second one took off, and they both headed off into the sunset. So that's cool. And if you ever seen a C5, the C5 is huge. They call it the Galaxy because it's about the size of the galaxy. It's humongous. And if you ever see one of those take off, it's like it goes down the runway and it just kind of saunters down the runway, and all of a sudden it just kind of like starts lifting off the ground. And it's like you figure I could walk that fast. It's so huge. It looks like it's going so slow. And it just kind of meanders its way on up. And then all of a sudden you realize that this thing is 5,000 feet up in the air, and you don't notice it because it's so big. You don't notice that it's that far away. And all of a sudden it's, it's huge. The Air Force Base outside of Dayton, can't think of the name right now. Been there a million times. But anyways, there's C5s that fly in and out of there. And when I was there for Dayton one year, and I found a good spot where I could watch them fly in and take off. It was cool. So,
yeah, speaking of Dayton, if it doesn't get canceled, and if Rich sends us out and could send us out a couple days early, I would love to go to that. We didn't get to do that aviation museum there.
Right.
So we definitely would have to do that.
Yeah, the U.S. Air Force National Air Force Museum is there at the air base outside of Dayton, and I mean that's a whole day at that museum. It is, and you could probably go there the second day and still not see everything. So, so let's see here. Bear Bull lives near Travis Air Force Base and Moffett. So and then and Bob reminds us, and Bob lives even closer to the Air Force Base around here than I do, and they have ground operations. They have a UHF P25 trunking system on 380, 390 megahertz. I can't pick them up from my house, but I do listen to it when I get closer to the area. Every once in a while I can pick it up, but most of the time I'm just too far away, and there's a mountain range between us. Will an SDS 200 program statewide trunking systems if he enters a zip code, or will only program local freaks from its database?
Yeah, so I wasn't paying attention because I was just thinking you were just going to take off with it. I
gotta let you talk a little bit,
Yeah, so these statewide, it depends on how it's geo-tagged in the radio. Typically, it's going to be geo-tagged with a widespread. So the other thing with those channels, those statewide trunk frequencies or talk groups, I should say, one have to be geo-tagged for the state. So it's going to have a large enough circle to cover it. So when you're putting in the zip code, it'll turn on. Two, depending on how these talk groups are identified, they may be identified as interop or one of the other identifications on there. You want to make sure that those are turned on. Typically, your defaults are law dispatch, fire dispatch, and so on. But any of those interops, you want to make sure interop law, interop fire are turned on as well, because even though that you may be entering that zip code, you see it's listed there as a statewide. You want to make sure whatever it's tagged as on radio reference is turned on in your scanner. We covered some of this in the last video, so definitely take a look at that. That's last week's broadcast, and we kind of covered the Sentinel software. We kind of dipped into a little bit of the inner workings of the radios. So definitely make sure that you have whatever it's tagged as on, and it will program in, when you put in your zip code, as long as it's within that geotagged range, it'll turn on, and it'll also be programmed in with the local stuff as well. There's no differentiating in between local law and state law. So when you have law dispatch, it's going to have those different levels. The only way you can differentiate is if you create a favorites list. So if you do a favorites list that's just for state, or you do a favorites list that's just for the local stuff, or the county stuff.
So Joe mentions I should have an 11th BCT15 for known frequency scanners. I actually used to have 12 15s in there, and when I got a couple of XTs, I put those in there. I took the 15s out. I got one of them on my desk here I use for very local stuff, and I've got one in the garage. And I used to do just that. I would have stuff that I knew about programmed into those, and what stuff I want to listen to all the time. Now I use one of the 996s for that. So you can see the 996s on there because they got the different color displays. The 15 doesn't have the multicolor display lights, whereas the 996s do. So, and let's see here. Roger lives next to Westover in Massachusetts. That's Western Mass, right?
Westover, I believe it's Central Mass. I'm not familiar with the military bases. I mean, if you ask me a train-related thing, I know it better than that. But yeah, it's Central. Yeah. I believe it's Central or Western.
Our question about the databases and stuff, a little follow-up on that one. The State Patrol in Wisconsin covers many localities. So, yeah, you're like you said earlier, you're better off doing that on the favorites list if you can. And that way you can pick exactly the talk groups. The State Patrol uses a digital VHF trunking system nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best thing for a lot of these radios that are databases to use a favorites list. I mean, the favorites lists are pretty easy to do. I do have a video that's on YouTube that's not the live rendition of what we did, but it's on the Scanner Master YouTube account. And I go over basically how to create a favorites list, with trunking and also with conventional. So it kind of covers the both. I mean, if you're pretty computer savvy to be able to work Microsoft Word and Excel, the basics, you should be able to operate Sentinel. They really didn't complicate it. They tried to keep the software as simple as the radio's operation.
Yeah. Naval Air Station Jacksonville has got VHF channels because their civil aircraft there need to transit their Class D space, which is the area around the airfield. And
where did that come
from? I don't know.
The high school.
Yeah. I gotta stop drinking so much.
Getting a little so you mentioned earlier Class C space. Briefly, what is the definition of all these classes?
If you take a cone, upside down cone, it goes up like this. There's Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D airspace, and they're discs on top of each other. So Class D airspace is, and I don't remember how many miles, 20 miles around the airport from, again, I don't remember the exact numbers. It might be from, 5,000 to 10,000 feet. And then Class C might be within 5 miles of the airbase at, 2,000 to 5,000 feet and stuff like that. I don't remember the exact limits, but that's basically what it is. It's like stacking a couple discs on top of each other, and the bigger discs are higher and the slower discs. So basically you have this protected area around the airbase. So an airplane can fly at this altitude, this close to the airbase, and they can fly at this altitude, this close to the airbase. So it changes based on your altitude. And so you got
Class A, you're really darn close.
Class A, you're close. Class B, you're further out. Class C, you're further out. Class D, the Delta airspace is even further. So it's there's some if you look on the internet, there's going to be a great explanation of that. And I think, and I'm not positive, but I think most airports have different sizes and things, different restrictions based on the local needs. So like O'Hare Airport, it's got a much wider protected area because of the amount of traffic going in and out, and the altitudes might change, but some of that stuff has to be adjusted. So it's not always a perfect circle. Chicago Executive, which used to be called Palwaukee, which is, I don't know, 15 miles away. The airplanes, they have to kind of cut a section out of that part of the cone so that planes can get in and out of Palwaukee or Chicago Executive without impeding on the airspace at O'Hare. So if you are going to go through that, you can usually do that depending on the airport, but you have to coordinate that with the airport. Depending on your altitude, you're in the Class Delta, the Class Charlie airspace, and you have to contact that airport and make sure you have permission to go through there at whatever altitude you're going to be and follow the commands of the tower before you do so. And at NAS Jacksonville, which is relatively common for a lot of bases, they have a local flying club. So you might, obviously pilots like to fly their own planes versus their work planes as well. So there's a flying club, and they're flying civilian aircraft, Cessnas and Pipers and gliders and stuff that only have VHF radios. And if they have permission to fly them on that base, they have to have a way to contact the tower. So the tower has to have a VHF channel. So not all bases allow personnel to have their private aircraft on the base, but the ones that do have to make accommodations for it. All right, so the next comment from Barry. You have to read that link very carefully. Okay? It's not an ad for a sex change.
I saw that.
It's ADS exchange. So it's not an ad for a sex change.
I saw that, but the second you brought that attention, I said, "Oh, ad sex change." Okay.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you want to do some gender reassignment stuff, that you can try, but I don't think you'll find a lot of information on that there. So, adsexchange.com. I'd double check that link. It might be ADSB exchange. I'm not sure. I'd have to check. But anyways, double check that link. But it's a great place to show where activity aircraft, and a lot of military aircraft do transmit ADSB. And that's something we're not really going to talk about a lot today because we can spend an entire show on ADSB. But it's basically a transponder that aircraft have, and it reports location, identification, and airspeed. And if you have a proper receiver, you can actually track that information. And I have an ADSB receiver that I use occasionally. So, Area 51. Yeah, I don't think Area 51 has got a flying club. Although if you ever go to Vegas, if you ever fly into Vegas and you see the white 737s with the single red stripe along the windows line, the cheat line, those are an airline called Janet, and they actually are a civilian contractor for the military. And a lot of those flights go from Vegas to Area 51 and to a couple other military facilities around the area. And they come up on the civilian channels, and I'm sure they've got UHF radios so that when they get to Groom Lake, they can talk to the tower there. So and they identify as Janet, and that's their call sign. And that's the military, the civilian contractor for the military to fly their personnel from Vegas up to the base. So Dale, our buddy from Montana, can hear military aircraft from the Salt Lake, Denver, and a bunch of other centers. And there's a refueling practice and bombing practice range up there. So yeah, there's a lot of military aircraft up in the Northwoods. I had a buddy of mine who was in the Air Force, and we got temporary building at the Air Force Base near Rapid City. And my brain is fried tonight. I don't remember the name of it, but I actually was able to stay on base, and I actually saw my first F-117 stealth fighter there before they actually acknowledged that it was there, so that it even existed. We were on a base going to the not the base hotel, and I forget what they call it, but I was never in the military, but they have a transit, not a dormitory. It's basically looks like, like a Super 8 hotel where, Air Force personnel from transiting through the area can stay. And as we're going to get there, there was one of the stealth fighters that they didn't have. So let's see here. Donnie worked at the local airport, and he had an instructor bring in 2 T-45 Goosehawks for training on Thanksgiving. That was pretty cool. So you will see occasionally military aircraft flying into airports that don't have any military operations. Or if they have military operations, these are not related to it. Ted and I were down at Springfield, and there was a fighter jet, and I don't know if it was an F-15, F-16, or whatever, on the tarmac on the civilian side, and he just stopped for gas and to use the washroom and, grab a bite to eat. And there was a reserve base on the other side of the airport, but he was on the civilian side. So, he, for whatever reason, he was flying across the country, and he had to stop and get gas and relieve himself and such. So, let's see here. The best scanner antennas out there, Mark, the best scanner antenna you can get is the one that you can get up and out. So, if you're looking for a base station antenna, get something up and out of the house. So I've got antennas in the attic because I'm not allowed to have outside antennas, but get an antenna up and out. And we've got a show scheduled sometime, I don't remember when it is, all about scanner antennas. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And we have breaking news. Breaking news, as we've probably heard 9,000 times over the last several weeks. We found the culprit of what happened here. Somebody pulled the plug on YouTube and creating the outage.
That's what happened.
Looks like Bob over at Master Control, found the issue. It was a pulled out plug. This is actually something that I found on Marshall Sherrod's Facebook page. This is the exact picture he used. So thank you, Marshall, for posting this. I just basically reposted it on our slide so people can see what happened here. Somebody pulled the plug.
Yeah. It happens. It happened. That's probably exactly what happened. Some janitor was probably poking around and unplugged something to plug in his vacuum cleaner. We had that happen at work. We lost our entire radio repeater system because a guy that was working on the air conditioner unplugged a UPS to plug in his drill. That UPS was a UPS about the size of a refrigerator, and he thought it was a place where he could plug in his drill, but it was this great big huge plug like this. He unplugs that looking for a place to plug his drill in, and the UPS failed after about 10 minutes. It wasn't intended to run the entire repeater system that long. 10 or 15 minutes later, the repeaters went bad, and what's going on? And so I go downstairs, and there's this guy working on the air conditioner. He had a drill. He used it to pull some screws out, and I said, "What did you do?" I said, "Oh, I was looking for a place to plug this in, and it wouldn't fit there, so I plugged it in over here." I said, "All right." So now we've got 5 towns don't have a radio channel because this guy pulled the plug.
One plug did it all.
Yeah, and it was one of these big twist lock, 30 amp twist lock things, and he just it doesn't look that much. He somehow or another he was able to figure out how to unplug it, and of course he wouldn't plug it back in. So,
man.
All righty, so let's see here. So when you're looking for the best antenna for something, you got to figure out what you're going to listen to and where you're going to mount it. And those are the first 2 questions we ask. What do you want to listen to, and how do you plan on mounting this? So once we know that, then we can start looking at, okay, you're looking for a base station antenna that you're going to put on the roof. So, okay, now you don't really have to worry about the size of the antenna as much as you get one that's going to be durable to survive the weather. But yeah, okay, I need to put one in the attic because I can't put one on the roof. Okay, so we're probably looking for a smaller antenna, but it doesn't need to be as sturdy because it's going to be protected from the weather. So those are why we ask those questions. And then, of course, the obvious thing is, what do you want to listen to? If you listen to only 800 or only VHF or only this, that's great. If you listen to a lot of stuff, we're probably going to point you towards a disc code. And then, again, it might be that you're looking for an antenna for the car or an antenna to go on the radio itself. So, yeah, we're going to ask you a lot of questions before we suggest an antenna for you. Ellsworth Air Force Base, thank you. That was the one in South Dakota where I was able to stay at. So let's see here. Of course, I lost track here. So Mark is looking for antenna to go from 30 megahertz to 1.7 gigahertz. So he wants to listen to a wide range of stuff.
Wide range.
You're probably going to look at a disc cone because you're not going to get a lot of gain, but you're going to get pretty decent coverage across the board there. So we were talking earlier about why the 996 was slower than the 15 on the search speed. He did have the settings set the same, so the same steps. So for whatever reason, the 15 seems to search faster than the 996. SDRs will do that in a lot shorter time. They work a little bit differently. So Barry obviously was an old Air Force guy. The klaxon alert force scramble for the BC-52s or the B-52s, the KC-135s launches during their exercises, or the F-106 Delta Darts. The F-106 was an old Vietnam era fighter jet. They were fast. Yeah, we should do the plane aficionados show. Like we have the train aficionado show, we should do the plane aficionado show.
The only problem is I don't have any of the, at least with the train aficionado show, we both have background on it. This, I'll be just doing a lot of, I'll be
doing a lot of,
yeah, I'll be just like the, what is it, like the old the dog that they would put in the car that would just do the
bobblehead.
So
So and we do. We both actually have to work for a living. So it's something we might consider down the road if so. So Joe's got a good point where we're talking about the mall activity might be kind of limited because of the COVID thing this year. But he says maybe radios might be more useful or used more often because people won't want to have direct contact amongst the employees. So instead of walking up and talking to the guy working on the other side of the store, call him on the radio so you don't have to, you can still maintain your social distancing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Let's see here. Radios are very COVID preventative. Yep, absolutely. Mall bingo. Here are all the stores. Yeah. So the thing is, not all the stores actually talking to radios, and a lot of times they change frequencies quite often too. So, the perfect scanner package would be the free one. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have free SDS 200s on November 32nd. Let's see here. Let's see, care to share any HF frequencies? So, there's been a lot of HF. There's a lot of HF stuff. There's a lot less HF stuff now than there was before, but there are still HF frequencies used by the military. I'm not that up on the HF stuff, so you're going to have to look for other resources there. So looks like Mark built an ultralight. So Joe's looking for business frequencies for campgrounds and RV campgrounds. Your best bet there is you're really going to be close call. They probably don't talk a lot, and when they do, if you're there, just use close call. That'll be a good way to find them. Greg asks, what's more interesting, rail fanning or military air fanning? That's up to you. For Jonathan, rail fanning. And for me, I like them both. And other people like aircraft and have no interest in trains. My buddy Ted, he huge aviation radio guy, and he could care less about trains. So, let's see here. Our buddy Mike is in Mississauga. Hope everybody celebrated Veterans Day or Remembrance Day, depending on which country you're in. So Donnie says he's talked to military aircraft on 146-52 simplex and ham radio. So I have never actually worked an aircraft on the radio, but I have heard pilots talking on 146-52. Some military, some civilian. If they've got the ability on their hams, and that's kind of fun. So I mean, I've got a ham radio in my car. Why couldn't a pilot have a ham radio in his aircraft? If the owner of the airplane doesn't have a problem with it, it's put in there safely. Why not? 2C5 getting airborne is called a miracle. Yeah, the C5s are big, and the fact that they can actually fly is amazing. So Steve said a C-17 was there 2 weeks ago for the president. Had some Secret Service comm trucks and Osprey inside the C-17. So, yep. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I just had a brain fade there. I couldn't remember. Let's see here. There's a video of a guy of a C-5 landing at a civilian airport. Actually, I think the video is the C-5 taking off from that civilian airport when it landed there by mistake. And there was a 747 that landed at a small civilian airport. I think it was Oklahoma or Kansas when he was supposed to land at the Air Force Base 5 miles away. The airports were in the same alignment. He landed at the wrong airport, and they had to unload the entire aircraft to make sure it could take off safely. So, yeah, Joe says I need an outside Yagi pointed towards that trunking system that I can't quite pick up. So, yeah, if it looks like an outdoor TV antenna. So, yeah, I was thinking about putting an antenna outside that would look like a TV antenna, at least to the Homeowners Association. Mike doesn't have a lot of Canadian Forces bases around his area. Got one about 100 kilometers, about 60 miles. So, yeah, but you're still going to be able to hear aircraft. Let's see here. So the Canadian Forces bases have a nationwide VHF P25 system with some encryption for the MPs, but most of the stuff's running in the clear. So here in the States, we have a UHF nationwide system. It's actually a bunch of independent trunking systems that they share a system. So basically, it's not so much so that Luke can talk to Davis Moncton, but the personnel from Luke can go to Davis Moncton and use their radios. Dave got a great comment here. Going back to today's tip of the day about the alert lights. On the Whistler scanners, the alert light stays on for the duration of the transmission. On the Union scanners, it only stays lit for a couple seconds. And is there a way to increase the duration? As far as I know, Dave, there is not. I wish there was. And that's why I put the activity lights on some of those scanners. I just wish that Uniden would do that, but they have not done that at this point. Joe's got a Jetstream antenna up his attic. That's working very well for him there. And it is ADSB. So, yeah, okay, it is ADSB exchange and not ADS exchange. So, yeah, I wasn't quite sure about that one. So that prior link is ADSB exchange, not ADS exchange. And Chris says that none of the F-35s in his area have ADSB on. So, yeah, usually the smaller fighter planes do not. but the larger transport planes usually do. And also there's a lot of executive aircraft for the military. They'll have civilian versions of the Gulfstream and such that they use for generals and officers and stuff. They will typically have ADS-B because they transmit. They often go to civilian air bases. Building. Thank you, Jay. That was what they call it, temporary building. Again, I'm not having not been in the military, I don't remember all the terminology. But yeah, when we were stopped at that Air Force base, we had temporary building for the night, and saved us, some money on the hotels. And when you're, young and broke, every bit of money you can save is important. So, let's see here. Any South American built? Are the South Americans still bootlegging on our military satellites? I used to listen to that quite a bit. The military shot hundreds of satellites up into the atmosphere, up into space, and they're satellite repeaters. So you talk in on one frequency, talk out on the other. And on the older ones, there was no real security on them. So if you're transmitting on the right frequency, you can and hear them back. So a lot of South American, I think it was Brazil and Uruguay, or I'm not sure which countries they were, but they figured out those frequencies. And since the military wasn't using them anymore, they were still up there. They were using them bootlegging on there. So you'd be hearing taxi cabs and drug runners and whatever businesses are operating out there, operating on our military satellites. Some of them are still stuff being used, and some of it stuff hadn't been used in years. Wow. So, John's finally, for the first time, he's online to catch us, and of course, John's first night to watch us is when YouTube crashed. So, but it looks like it's working again. Oh yeah, Dennis brings up a good one. There was a disgruntled contractor. I think he was actually an employee. It could have been a contractor. I don't remember. But he went to Chicago Center, which is out in Aurora, which is 40 miles west of Chicago. And it's just a building in the middle of a business park. And apparently this guy was doing a little smoking the wacky weed, and he had some dispute with work or something like that, and he went in and basically torched the inside of the center building, and it totally disrupted communications for aircraft going in and out of O'Hare, Palwaukee, and Midway and such, and they had to scramble to restore that and to move personnel to other locations. And yeah, it was a real mess for about a month there before they got that all fixed. Let's see here. Would you use an SDS to search for frequencies used by the radios in the drive-through? Yeah, you could. But the drive-throughs aren't using two-way radios as much as they used to. It used to be real easy to find them at close call. They were at 35.02, 154.6. 466.8875 or what have you. So, but a lot of that stuff now are using spread spectrum headsets, and which are not listenable to on a scanner. So yeah, I had a ting a while ago with a text message. So yeah, unfortunately, the way I have my thing set up here, it tings on the computer as well. So when I get a text message, everybody knows about it. But at least you're not seeing my text messages.
Yeah.
So now some drive-thrus still do use regular radio stuff. 457.5125 is popular. I get a close call hit whenever I drive by certain Wendy's or stuff like that. So they're still out there occasionally, but a lot of that stuff is switched over to more modern stuff that doesn't use radios that we can listen to on a scanner. in a bunch of different stores. 11175 kilohertz on upper sideband is active all the time. Thanks, Carmen, for that. And upper sideband is very common on HF. Lower sideband is more common below 10 megahertz, and upper sideband is more common on above 10 megahertz. Let's see here. It's the 245th birthday of the Marine Corps this week. So happy birthday to the Marine Corps. Let's see here. For HF, we'll go 100 watt mobile radios and VHF. So yeah, there's a wide variety of different ham radios that you can get for the car. I used to have a couple ICOM radios I would put in the car, but I don't do a lot of HF work anymore, and so I don't put those in the car anymore. There's ICOM, there's Kenwood, there's a Linko, there's a wide variety of different brands of HF 2 meter and 440 radios, and some that do all of that. Oh, let's see here. Talking about a wideband antenna, pretty much if you want something that does everything, you're pretty much going to be stuck with a disc cone. It's really about the only antenna that's going to be able to do such a wide range of frequencies and get you any decent coverage. The thing is with the disc cone antenna is it works pretty well for just about everything. It doesn't work really well for any one band, but it works pretty decent for just about everything. Let's see here. A lot of talk about HF and shortwave stuff. So yeah, we haven't really done a show on ham radio. Maybe that's something we should think about down the road as well. And let's see here, a bunch of SDR stuff. So I'm not a huge SDR guy. I've got a couple SDRs that I've played with, but the last one I bought was I forget which brand it was, but I plugged it in, it crashed my computer the first time, so I returned it. But there are some people who love SDRs. My buddy Joe just is a total SDR freak, and he uses them for everything. I've pretty much I've tried them, but I just really haven't got into them. And that's pretty much it for the comments that we have here.
Yeah, this was certainly a great show. I mean, there was a lot of topics covered just regarding military air. This is something that you could definitely monitor, and we've learned that, there's several scanners out in the market currently, all the current ones, and plus, our fan favorites, the BCT 15X and the 125AT are fan favorites of ours. And we've gotten some show ideas as well. Maybe doing a ham radio show, maybe doing a special show with just the military aircraft, and kind of taking a look at that as well. I mean, that would be an interesting show as well.
The aircraft themselves. Yeah.
I just want to just do a quick shout out to all of our viewers tonight during the YouTube cabal or whatever we want to call it. Being able to switch over our audience, which is pretty awesome. You guys are super loyal to us, and we appreciate it. Just being able to switch over a whole entire audience from one platform to another. And then I noticed a lot of you. Yeah, right over there, Rich.
Yeah, I think I'll live.
We don't want you to.
The water went down the food pipe, and
oh, geez. But yeah, I mean, it was awesome to be able to get you guys to be able to transition over to us from one channel to another. We appreciate that. Yeah. We will be live next Wednesday, and here's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about creating the perfect scanner gift package, and we're going to talk about some accessories that you should keep in mind during this Tube Gate. Yes, I love that, Joe. Tube Gate. So that'll be 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, Wednesday, November the 18th. We are excited about doing that. We're approaching the holidays. The show after that will be Thanksgiving Eve. We will have some fun with the Scanner Guys. It'll be one of those Ask the Scanner Guys types of shows where we talk to you about, whatever is a topic in the scanner world. And if we've got anything breaking with new products, we'll definitely provide that on that show as well. So definitely some exciting things there. Let me just go through some of our final slides before we call it a night. Make sure you join the Scanner Guys. We are live on the 7th of December, which is the first Monday of the month for Train Aficionado Live.
Did I mess that up again?
Yeah, it shows the first, but it's the 7th.
Oh, jeez. I'm sorry about that. That's my fault, guys.
So the 7th of December, which is the first Monday of the month, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We're live with another show, so make sure you check out the Train Aficionado YouTube account, subscribe there. We haven't done a topic for that show, so we'll let you know as we get closer to that. And make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to the Train Aficionado stuff as well. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And make sure you check out the Train Aficionado blog. And as always, we don't want you to forget to follow, like, and subscribe to Scanner Master, our sponsor for this evening's show on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And make sure you give the Scanner Guys some love on their social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at the Scanner Guys. And as always, the Scanner Guys are brought to you by Scanner Master. So if you made it this far during this broadcast on either channel, whether it been the Facebook channel or the YouTube channel, congratulations. We have another great show ahead of you guys. So we're looking forward to doing some more great shows throughout the month of November and December. Anything else you want to add, Rich, before we sign off?
No, I got to start double checking my dates, though. That's the second week in a row that I've screwed up the date for that. So
yeah,
that's my fault.
That's okay. No problem. I knew it was because we had a discussion about that last week, so I knew it was the 7th. Yeah. So it's no big deal. But yeah, I mean, the Train Aficionado show, all you got to remember is the first Monday of every month is when we're live on the Train Aficionado channel. So we'll do a good show on there for you guys, as well as on the Scanner Guys show. So if you're watching us on the train, not the trainer, we're not on that channel right now, but if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you were hopped over on our Facebook page and you didn't like the page, make sure you like it. In case something happens again with YouTube, we'll hop over to the Facebook page and be able to broadcast there on our backup transmitter. So we thank you so much for joining us. Be safe out there, and we'll catch you again next week.
Sounds good. We'll see you next week, guys.
All right. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm not.
Have a good night, Rich.
Later, guys.
We'll catch you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.